this is where it fell apart. Hello, Horror Nights in family, and welcome back to my YouTube channel, your home for scary movie reviews and horror movie related topic videos every single Wednesday and Saturday. You look so beautiful today. Thank you so much for joining me. And it must be Wednesday, which means we're gonna be talking about a horror movie. And I am excited about this in-depth review of the film There's Someone Inside Your House. So let's do it. Okay, horror friends, we're going to be talking about the film There's Someone Inside Your House. In this video, I'm going to be doing an in-depth review of the film, and after, I'm going to be giving you my overall opinion, my favorite and least favorite characters, my favorite kills, and kind of explaining the ending. Also, thank you so much if you voted in the community poll and wanted this film, and if you didn't get a chance to vote, make sure to hit that subscribe button, and my polls will automatically show up in your feed. There are also timestamps if you guys want to skip around a little bit. So a quick summary of the film. The graduating class at Osborne High are being targeted by a masked assailant intent on exposing the darkest secrets of each of its victims. And only a group of misfits can stop the killings. Warning, this video contains lots and lots of spoilers, so if you haven't seen this film, I encourage you to go to watch it and come back. Also, this video is going to be very long, so make sure to get comfy and cozy. All right, let's get started. The film opens and we are introduced to Jackson, a football player from Osborne High, who is on the phone with his friend and having a lively conversation. And we see an egg timer is on the kitchen island. Jackson then decides to take a little after-school nap. Those were always my favorite kind of naps. It is now dark outside and he is awakened by the egg timer going off beside him, which is originally where he put his cell phone. He then rushes to get to the football game, but sees that his front door is open and his truck is missing. He rushes back inside and we get our title screen. Jackson calls 911, but then hangs up because he is greeted with ominous printouts of what we can assume is a hazing gone wrong. These printouts are also leading up to his parents' bedroom. He then hears his missing phone go off inside of his parents' closet and decides to grab a golf club for protection. Once he makes his way inside of the closet, he is greeted with more printouts from the hazing incident, and it looks like Jackson was the culprit behind it. As Jackson is swinging around the golf club and saying macho things, we get this really cool aerial view of a hand with a very long knife in its hand come out from under the clothes and slice his Achilles tendons, giving me hostile. As Jackson is pleading for his life, he tells the masked assailant that he can Venmo him right now if he wants money. That's a new way to bargain for your life. Speaking of masked assailants, we see the killer is wearing a mask that looks exactly like his victim Jackson's face. It's giving me Texas Chainsaw Massacre. But before Jackson can Venmo the killer stabs him in the chest. The scene cuts and we are at the Friday night football game for Osborne High, and it's all school spirit and rah-rah. But then we hear a ton of text message pings go off, and it's the hazing video being sent to all of the attendees. As the opening credits start rolling in, we learn that Jackson didn't kill his teammate Caleb in the hazing video, but on the standards of high school hazing, it was taken a little too far. We also learn that this whole hazing incident was a secret, and somehow the killer found out and broadcasted it to everyone in their small Nebraska town. So the opening credits were cool because we saw how the killer makes the masks of his victims' faces, and it's from a 3D printer with extracted photos from their high school yearbook. Okay, so next we meet our group of friends, the Misfits. Makani, the lead character, Alex, Zach, Darby, and Rodrigo. The group is outside of their high school, and we can see a memorial for Jackson, and this odd tribute to him by one of his football player friends, and he is singing and pours out a Monster energy drink. Anyways, in the next scene, the group of friends are having lunch, and we get a little bit of insight on the group. Zach's father seems to be this land tycoon who is buying up these really big properties all over the town for very cheap. And Zach doesn't seem to be too fond of this, or his dad. Caleb hesitates to sit down with his football team. But don't worry, the Misfits are here to save the day and invite him over to sit down. But before we can learn anything else, we get an impromptu stand on the table lunch speech from the senior student council president, Katie. This speech is very cringe and giving me very much privilege and uncomfy vibes. We also learn that Darby is non-binary and Caleb is gay from this very awkward, weird speech. Oh, and we also learn that Rodrigo has a pill-popping problem, and our leading lady is secretly making eyes with the super misfit of Osborne High, Ollie. The school day is now finished, and the friends make their way outside to Zach's car, which is a Range Rover. So we know his family has money, which was apparent with the chat the group had earlier at lunch about his dad. We can also see that someone spray painted the Range with the words, "Property of Sanford Family Fucks." The friends are now hotboxing the Range, and we learn that Makani was a transfer student, and we get our first encounter with Ollie, who all the friends think is a sociopath. Okay, so now we meet Gam, Makani's grandmother, who apparently sleepwalks. And we also learn that Makani is fighting some inner demons about something that happened to her in the past. Dun dun dun. She is now alone in her bedroom and she's writing some poetry. And she gets a text from Ollie. So those secret eyes to Ollie during Katie's speech were insinuating the two had a secret romance. Spicy. Then we see that Makani is having these strange dreaming flashbacks from what we can assume is the thing that Gam was talking about. And we get a little jump scare here, but it's nothing more than Gam. In the next scene, we see that the town is holding a memorial service at their church for Jackson. And Katie, the student council president, is an altar server. I was an altar server back in my religion days. So we see that she's talking to Marcus, the other altar server, and she is confiding in him her real thoughts about what happened to Jackson. And she is implying that Caleb has something to do with it, but then Marcus disappears. And we also see that there is a projector set up to show photos of the dearly departed. But then her phone rings and it's Marcus telling her that he can't make it today because he's sick. So who was under the hood of the other altar server? Well, whoever it is locks the door, and we see the projector screen change to audio from a podcast called Whitewash, and it looks like Miss Small Town Nebraska Katie has a hate speech podcast intended for daily use to wash away all national impurities. What? We then get this awesome scene of the killer with Katie's 3D printed mask on right behind her. Katie is trying to talk her way out of her podcast, but then we see the killer pull out his very large long knife and slice and dice Katie right across the stomach. She is now crawling under the pews, and we can still hear her podcast playing in the background. And she runs into the confessional booth as the killer is just stabbing the door. The killer then shoves the knife into the side of the booth, and Katie decides now to call 911 and tell the operator that the killer is wearing her face and forcing her to record hate speech at knife point. But before she can get the last word out, the killer shoves her face into the knife. Good riddance. Oh, and of course, the town has shown up for the memorial service. And as they make their way inside, they are greeted with Katie's podcast and also her dead body hanging from the ceiling in front of the altar. When I saw this scene, I let out an audible Oh, shh. Okay, so now we are back with Gam and Makani watching a news special at home about the murders. And we see that each time the killer strikes, the killer sends this all-telling image about his newest victim. Makani is now in her bedroom and she's Googling her name, and nothing comes up. And then we get another flashback, like the one we saw earlier, in her dreams. Her phone then rings and it's Rodrigo, which... it's a bit of a useless scene of him being high on painkillers. We already kind of knew that, and we can assume that that's his secret. I mean, I guess we find out that he likes Alex, but it's high school. Everybody likes everybody. Anyways, we do find out from this scene that Makani was involved in an incident back in Hawaii, where she is from, where she pushed a girl into a fire. Oh, and her real last name is Sun Woo. Moving on, we now see the friends at the local police station, and they're being interrogated about the murders. They are also discussing who the killer might be. And Zach brings up the idea of how the town may be getting rid of their police department and replacing it with private security. But then we see that Zach's father was able to get him out of the interrogation, and of course he leaves, but not before we meet his father, who we learn is not very fond of his son by any means. Oh, and we meet Dave, the Uber driver, who I assume is like the low-end comic relief of this film. So now it's a little later and Makani and Ollie are the only ones left in the police station. And as I said, Ollie is the outcast of the outcasts. And I guess the filmmakers decided that if they want to show him as the bad boy, they have to like put him in a leather jacket. Oh, and we also find out that Ollie's brother is the sheriff, and he tells him to, like, wait for him. We also get the conversation between Makani and Ollie, and we learn that they did have a summer romance, and Makani is keeping it from her friends. The sheriff then comes out and asks Ollie if he has seen his taser. Like, no wonder the town is debating on whether to replace the police department with private security. They're, like, misplacing their assault weapons. Makani is then interrogated, but it looks like the sheriff really hasn't done his homework because he tells her she is free to go because she's a good kid. Now, mind you, we can't assume that the sheriff has done a background check on every single student in the high school, but considering they think that their suspect is probably someone who goes to high school, you would think that they would do that. Makani then comes out and tells Ollie that they're gonna go on an adventure. And I'm kind of confused because, like, wasn't he told to wait for his brother? Whatever. Oh, and we also learn that there's a curfew set for the town as well. In the next scene, we get the two riding around in Ollie's car and listening to cassettes and smoking cigarettes. It's one of the many scenes we get between the two of them, which in my opinion were kind of boring, but we'll get into that later, so stick around until the end. While the two are about to legit do it in somebody's driveway, they see their classmates heading to a secret party that's being thrown by Zach. They arrive at the party together, but she immediately ditches him and goes and hangs out with her friends. The party goers are literally telling their secrets, which is why Zach called it a secret party. So then Alex tells her friends that she accidentally ran over a hitchhiker and dumped his body in the ocean. My secret at this point in the film is, man, I would rather be watching I Know What You Did Last Summer. Also, Ollie is like awkwardly standing and staring at the friends until Alex and Rodrigo tell him off. Oh, and Alex and Rodrigo share their secret that they have a crush on each other. Whatever, moving on. We then get this very strange, like, scare tactic scene from Zach where he pulls out a gun, puts it in his mouth, and pulls the trigger. But, oh wait, it's actually Nazi paraphernalia that he rigged into a smoking device. We then learn that Zach's dad is a Nazi collector. Apparently the 10th largest Nazi collection in North America. And Zach has rigged all of the artifacts into bongs. I feel like Zach's father and Katie would have been really good friends in this film. We then get the rest of the party scene where the kids are just smoking out of all of these different things like gas masks, trumpets, and phones. Oh, and Alex and Rodrigo like bang in a pantry. Immediately after, Rodrigo spots his pills on the floor, kind of like a trail leading to this bottle of pills. Then we get the ominous pings of everyone's cell phones letting out his secret that he is addicted to painkillers. And then the lights go out. And uh-oh, the killer is here wearing Rodrigo's face. While he is running for his life, he is explaining to whoever is listening that he takes them because he can't get out of his own head. He then hides in a closet, but then his cell phone goes off and gives his hiding place away. And the killer comes and hits him in the back of the head with the end of the knife. He is now scaling the vents, but the killer is just slicing and dicing right through it. He is able to get out of the house, but then he is tased, and the killer shoves pills into his mouth before the killer slices his throat. The group is now bonding over the loss of their friend, and we see that the high school is now closed until October. We then get yet another flashback to the scene from Makani's past. So some time has passed and everyone is back in school gearing up for the Friday night football game. And Alex is now thoroughly convinced that Ollie is the murderer, along with the rest of the school. During the Friday night football game, there's this really odd confrontation between Alex and Makani about how Alex is convinced that Ollie is the killer. Her and Zach are like stating all these facts, like Ollie's brother is the sheriff, so he can do background checks and he can like hack into computers. And remember, the sheriff's taser is missing, which was used on Rodrigo. McKenna then leaves because she's just over her friends. And Ollie is texting her that he wants to see her. Oh yes, and Gam is off to her sleepaway camp to work on her sleepwalking. So the next day, Ollie just shows up at Makani's house, and we get another one of those very long-winded scenes of the two of them in his car, smoking cigs and listening to cassette tapes. Their final destination is the cornfields, and the two of them stand on top of his car and just look at rows and rows of corn. Ollie then hints at like maybe he is the killer because he knows her secret. The two are about to almost get it on again, but then Ollie gets a call from his brother, the sheriff, and while he's on the phone, Makani finds a taser in his glove box. But before she can freak out, we find out like there's like this moment where we find out that like Ollie's parents actually died in a car crash because they were drunks. And here's where we learn that Ollie did a background check on Makani and knows her real name and knows what happened to her back in Hawaii. So what this film does, like we've seen in other films, is they make everybody a suspect. So she then leaves and she gets a ride home from Dave, the Uber driver. And it's a little weird and off-putting, especially like when Dave asks her, oh, are you home by yourself? So she's a little freaked out, and once she is inside, she locks her doors and she puts a chair under her bedroom doorknob just in case. She is once again having these flashbacks from her past, and we see a girl with half of her face burned. She then wakes up and she sees that her door is open, the chair is gone, and her phone is missing. She calls 911, but instead is greeted with her court testimony of when she pushed the girl in the fire. She drops the phone and is making her way into her living room where there is a roaring fire and printouts of the girl that she pushed in the fire, along with the newspaper article about what happened. We can also see that there's a body outline on the floor. So as she picks up the article, we can see that the killer is outside, wearing her face. The killer then punches through the window and tases her and is covering her body in lighter fluid. He grabs a paper to light it on fire, but then we see car headlights and they both get distracted, and she kicks the killer's legs out from under him, causing him to fall over and his mask to fall off. But before we can see who the killer is, runs out of the house. Oh, and the headlights belong to Alex, who is calling the cops, telling them that the address is 1412 Prescott Lane. Oh, and now Makani is also convinced that Ollie is the killer. And of course, everybody knows her secret now. The next day at the hospital, Makani wakes up to see her friends and her Gam are there next to her. Oh, and the cops have also arrested Ollie. And here's where we learn what fully happened to Makani back in Hawaii, and also all those flashbacks we keep getting. Makani was hazed by seniors, forced to drink alcohol, and turn on her teammates. Well, she decided to one-up everyone and push a girl named Jasmine right into the fire. She did survive, but she was severely burned. Makani was acquitted, but the after effects didn't stop, so that's why she moved. And she also changed her last name. The friends then have this like cute little moment of hugging in the hospital. Makani is now home. She's watching her boyfriend get arrested on TV. Oh, and we also learned that some like corn festival is happening the next week. So now we are at the high school and Makani is stranded with no ride because Zach is stuck working the corn maze for his dad, who of course like owns the whole festival. Then we find out that Ollie, the murdering boyfriend, has been let out of jail, and his first stop is to the high school to confront Makani, but she hightails it out of there. She is now running through the dark hallways of the high school, and she calls 911, but then hangs up when she hears a door open behind her. We then get another jump scare, but it's Caleb. But then we hear the slice and dice, and the killer has stabbed Caleb from behind. And of course, he is wearing Caleb's face. The killer then puts the knife in Makani's hand, and we hear Ollie running behind her. Oh no, she wrongfully accused her boyfriend. So we see that Ollie is trying to help Caleb, and the rest of the friend group run inside. I'm confused. Didn't they already leave? Anyways, somehow, Makani makes the conclusion that the killer is gonna strike at the corn maze. It's now dark out, and we see the killer going into the corn maze and spraying lighter fluid all over the ground. The friend group is now making their way to the corn maze, and we find out that Caleb is okay even after getting stabbed in the stomach. Okay, so now we kind of find out what we already knew. Zach's dad is trying to buy up all the land and replace the cops. The friends are trying to find Zach since we learn that he's working the maze, but Zach's the killer, so. The group then sees the corn maze is now up in flames, and Makani has this bright idea of driving Ollie's car through the corn maze to clear a path for the people inside. We are still getting these flashbacks of Makani when she pushed Jasmine into the fire. I get it, the correlation between the, blazing corn maze and the bonfire. I get it. But stop. The group then gets out of the car and we hear screaming. They run to help and are greeted with a dead private security officer and the football team who are trying to get out. So of course at this point they don't know that Zach is the killer and they're trying to go and find him. Then we are met with the scene of the killer, aka Zach, standing in front of his father who is pleading for his life, but it gets interrupted by Makani saying, "Hey asshole." But Zach then decides to uppercut his dad with a really long sword, killing him. Then we get this annoying, long-winded speech from Zach about how much he hates his father. Ollie tries to use a taser to stop Zach from killing them, but I guess the safety was on, and Zach stabs Ollie right in the stomach. Then we get another whiny speech from Zach about how hard it is to plan the murders of his friends and his family, and how hard his privileged life is. I guess his motive was that he was sad that his dad didn't love him enough. And then we get Zach's plan of pinning all of the murders on Makani. Ugh, the parallels to Scream. I will get into that later. Ollie then figures out how to take the safety off of the taser and tases Zach's privileged little booty. And Makani takes the knife that is still in her hand and stabs Zach while stating her final girl speech. The fiery scene ends, and we get these clips of Makani and her friends celebrating their last moments in high school, like getting accepted to college and going to the prom. And we also see that Makani calls Jasmine the girl she threw in the fire. And the film ends with Makani reciting a poem that she wrote at graduation. Okay, opinion time. Guys, this movie started out so strong and so cool, but then about 30 to 45 minutes in, it all just fell apart. I don't care about Makani's past. I don't care about her secret romance with Ollie. The only interesting thing about this film were the kills and the music. And the kill count was so low. We got 4 kills in total, and only 2 of them, in my opinion, were actually good. And I just have so many questions. Why did the killer use the egg timer? It was shown in the trailer, so I figured it would be sort of like the killer's warning sign. I also just didn't believe that the friend group were actually friends. Why didn't we get more backstory on that? Why didn't we get more backstory on how Ollie and Makani even met? We could have taken one of their very long-winded, boring car conversations and touched on that. I just had high hopes for this film because Patrick Bryce was the director, and I loved Creep and Creep 2. And the trailer looked so cool. And I was super hyped after I saw the first 2 kills. But oh my gosh, the parallels between Scream and this film were so in your face that it kind of almost made me think satire more than anything else. Listen, you guys know that I love Scream. It is my favorite horror movie. But the amount of in-your-face connections were more obnoxious than anything. So the film was also first a book written by Stephanie Perkins. And I was reading a few reviews, and the reviewers kind of felt the same way that I did. It was more of a teen romance novel with some horror thrown in. Now, I think the film is a little bit different from the book, but I felt the same way. If you take out the horror element, it's just a story about a girl who made a mistake in her past and how she's dealing with it. And I'm not sure where the title really fits into the film, where most of the murders took place outside of their homes. The only murder that happened inside of a house was the first one with Jackson. Now, I want to assume that the book murders probably took place inside of each of the victims' houses, but yeah, the title was kind of confusing. The pacing of the film was okay. I liked all the cool settings from the high school to the corn maze and Zach's house. The music was cool, which I already mentioned, but the characters. Which brings me into the friend group. Makani, who was played by Sydney Park, is beautiful, stunning, gorgeous, along with Alex, played by Ashta Cooper, also stunning. Everybody was nice to look at, don't get me wrong. I liked Darby. They seemed to be the only character who had really any kind of redeeming quality. They were trying to figure out their own identity in the midst of the small-minded Nebraska town. They did get a happy ending, so I'm at least okay with that. But nothing about the other friends were really believable. They openly said they hated football players, and they were very judgmental about Ollie. Considering they were misfits, it just didn't make any sense that they would be mean to somebody else. And we only really found out about their passions at the end of the film, like Alex with music and Darby with the NASA program. Zach, the killer, was okay, but he legit had Billy Loomis hair, Stumacher's red robe, and of course he had the house party in the middle of all the murders happening. He also had this very long-winded, validating speech at the end on why he was committing the murders to the final girl and was killed inevitably by the final girl. They threw around the word sociopath and psychopath a lot, like Zach saying that he wasn't one. Oh, and Makani lived at 1412 Prescott Lane. I mean, come on! Now, listen, I love when a lot of our favorite horror classics do callbacks to other horror films, but I don't know, guys. It seemed more corny than anything else. It's okay to do callbacks to older slasher films if the film that you are watching that's doing these callbacks is good. And Ollie, the filmmakers tried to make him like Billy Loomis. He's the misfit that's in love with the good girl. He gets arrested, then he is let go. Everybody thinks he's the killer, but of course it's different because Billy Loomis was the killer and Ollie is not the killer. It also mirrored Scream. It was a mystery, like a whodunit. And we were all pushed in the directions of who it might be, from the Uber driver, the sheriff, Zach's dad, and even some members of the football team. Speaking of football team, let's talk about the kills. I liked them. The special effects were awesome. The setup of the first 2 kills were really cool. And I really liked the idea of the killer wearing the victims' faces. Jackson's kill was fun to watch, and it was intense, and it built me up for the rest of the film. Also, he kind of looked like Casey Becker's boyfriend, Steve, like including the football jacket a little bit. I like how the filmmakers also didn't like cut away before we got to see like the gruesome slashing of his Achilles tendons. It was actually zoomed in on, which made me squirm. And Katie's murder was definitely my favorite. I mean, hanging her up in front of the altar with her bloody altar server robes on, that was so cool. Also, before even that, getting the knife to her mouth inside the confessional booth was so on brand considering the film is about secrets. So you get what I mean by the first half of the film really pumping me up for the rest of it because we got those really cool kills. Which brings me to my next kill, which is Rodrigo. This is where it fell apart. Rodrigo was battling his own demons and was coping with it by stealing his mom's painkillers. From what we know, he didn't have the best home life and he had feelings for Alex, but didn't know how to act upon them. He even explained why he took the painkillers. He was trying to get out of his own head. Now listen, I'm not condoning his actions of self-medicating, but his secret was not on the same level as Jackson's secret and Katie's secret. Jackson was drunk and punching the shit out of Caleb during a hazing. And Katie was recording her racist and white supremacist thoughts. I just think it was a really lame move to kill Rodrigo. Then we have the almost murder of Makani. Once again, yes, it was a secret, but it was something that she obviously was battling for a long time and was scared of her friends judging her if they found out. She was under the forced influence of alcohol, also during a hazing, and made a mistake. Literally no reason for her to die or even Rodrigo to die. Then we get the murder of Zach's father. Very cool special effects, but whatever. That was personal on Zach's end. It wasn't a secret that Zach's father was a rich, white, racist asshole who wanted to just run the small town. I wish the writers gave us more murders on the same line of Katie's secret. Give me some students who made a hate group towards Darby for being non-binary. Give me a dirty cop who used his power for his own good. Like, there are so many secrets that a small town can have that would follow along the line of Zach's motive for unmasking the evil. In conclusion, the film falls short of bringing anything new to the horror genre. It started off so strong, but completely took a nosedive. I wasn't rooting for Makani like I would Sydney Prescott. I didn't care about her relationship with the outcast weirdo. I would have really liked this film if it wasn't so centered on their relationship and it kind of just stuck to the kills. And if the secrets were enough for some of them to get murdered for. Let me know in the comments down below if you watched this film, what you thought about it, and what your favorite kill was. And if you like these kinds of videos, be sure to hit the like button so I can make more, and don't forget to subscribe. Alright friends, that's gonna be it for me and this video. If you like these kinds of videos, I have an entire playlist dedicated to horror movie reviews in the description box below. Thanks so much for watching, especially if you made it this far, and you can follow me on my social media if you want to. And I'll see you guys soon.